All right, there it is. So, man,
There it is.
I'm here with my friend Fabio, and it's Vieira. Is that how you pronounce the last
Vier,
name? Vieira?
yeah, Vieira. That's it. Portuguese last name. Even though I'm African, it's Portuguese last name.
What part of Africa are your parents from?
Yeah, not my parents, but my ancestors. They came from West Africa, mainly Nigeria, Ghana, and Congo. Congo is actually Central Africa, but
Right.
mostly from there. Most slaves came from there. We went centuries ago.
And so it's several generations that have
Several generations.
down.
Yeah, but I've done that DNA testing, and so I mostly yeah, Western and Central African.
Was there anything that surprised you on that DNA test? What else showed up?
No, not really, because when I lived in South Africa in 2008, I met. The thing about South Africa is that whenever you go there, since it's one of the strongest economies in the African continent, you can meet people from all over Africa. And most people there, they said, "Oh man, you look someone. Are you sure you're from Brazil? You look someone from Ghana or Cameroon or something like that." So that was not surprising at all.
Now, when you travel around the world, are people surprised because they may look at you and expect you to have a certain accent? They may think that you're American. They may expect an American accent coming, or they may think that an African accent is coming, and then a Brazilian accent comes. Does that throw people off?
Yeah, it does. My Brazilian accent is stronger now, but when I was living abroad, it was more American. So people used to think I was from the States,
Yeah.
from the Chicago region. Yeah, but people are usually surprised. As I told you, most African Brazilians, they don't have the opportunity to travel abroad. And whenever I meet people in other countries, they're quite surprised because my Brazilian accent is not that strong when I'm abroad. Here it is because I speak mostly Portuguese every day.
Yeah.
So my Portuguese accent is quite strong right now, but they are quite surprised.
I think it's probably not that much different with African Americans in terms of international travel. I mean, obviously there's many that do travel, but in all the countries I've been to all over the world, whenever I ran into Americans, it was pretty much always white Americans and very generic white Americans, the kind of white Americans you would expect to be traveling around. So I think
Yeah, that's
so I guess what it comes down to, it's a luxury for most people. Most people can't afford to go from one side of their country to the other, let alone another country where it's pretty expensive to get somewhere. And then it's if you're traveling with a family, it's super expensive, even if you try to budget.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've been, as I told you, all over the world, and I haven't met many African Americans as well. So whenever I met one, you always say, "Hey, brother, how's it going?" Because you're usually the only black guys around. So there was a special bond, an
Yeah.
automatic bond between us.
There's parts of America, right? Montana, because my dad was born in Montana and we spent a lot of time out there each summer. He's a big outdoorsman. And out of all the times I've been there, probably been there maybe 12 times growing up each summer. I never saw one black person until the very last time I was there. One guy at a restaurant. And I had to know his story. I had to know how he ended up in Montana. And I didn't get a chance to talk to him, unfortunately, because he was busy doing stuff. So I didn't want to just walk up to him and be like, "Hey, man, how'd you end up out here?" But to this day, I'm still curious. I'm like, "How did you end up in Montana?" Because Montana, and people are very nice in Montana, but it's very isolated from the rest of the U.S. in terms of a lot of people don't travel outside of Montana who live there, and it's not a multicultural state at all. There's some Native American populations and so forth, but you don't see a lot of Asians and Latinos or really anything non-white in Montana. And there's still very strong racist underlying tendencies in places like that too, where racial profiling happens everywhere. It happens where I live in Vegas, Nevada, but it really happens there. I mean, someone like me who is, no one knows what my ethnic background is, but they know I'm not white. And that's enough where
Yeah.
basically I'm going to deal with racism in a state like that. That's just to be expected.
Yeah, I've heard something. I think one of your videos, you said that sometimes you're racially profiled as African American. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. That's happened many times. It hasn't happened recently, honestly, to be honest about it. It hasn't happened, let's say, in, I don't know, the last 10 years or so, at least not obviously. but it's definitely happened throughout my life, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
And it was really confusing as a teenager when that happened because it's not like it's not like I would be ashamed if someone thought I was black. It wasn't that. I was like, hey, I'm not black, but it was, but I'm not. So I didn't grow up with that. So now I'm dealing with racism from someone who thinks I'm an ethnicity that I'm not. And for a young person, that's really confusing. You're like, well, wait a minute. What do you what do you think I actually am over here? And not that it matters because even if that person goes, oh yeah, you're not black, never mind, we're cool. I'm like, no, we're not cool. So you're coming at
No,
me
not at all.
because of your perception of me, and then if that perception is flawed, you're going to apologize. No, you just revealed who you are. People reveal who they
Yeah,
are. Once they reveal who they are, you believe them.
yeah, that's true. When I was quite young, really young, I wasn't born in Curitiba. Curitiba is one of the best cities to live in Brazil. It's in the state of Paraná. Is one of the southernmost most states in Brazil. It's quite a European city. Lots of Polish, Italian, Germans. What
Really?
else? Yeah, yeah, mostly Germans, Italian, Portuguese, and Polish, Ukrainians as well. And I've lots of times it happened that people said, "Oh, listen, Fabio, you even though you're black, you're smart. You're quite nice, even though you're black. Is that supposed to? How am I supposed to feel about it?
Right.
Is that supposed to mean something?"
Yeah. 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 It's basically saying, hey, most of your people are fucking idiots and you're different than that. Like that's supposed to be a compliment. Oh, really? You think so? Thank you. You know?
Yeah, am I supposed to say thank you to that? I mean, fuck it, man.
Yeah, that happens to some of my black friends in America where some of them are really educated, right? So I wouldn't say they talk like white people, but they don't talk like the stereotype that white people have of African American, right? They don't
Yeah.
sound like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of someone, Anyway, I'm trying to think of that people that they don't sound like Jay-Z or Will Smith or something like that, right? So this it's totally different. But they often get like, wow, I didn't expect you to sound like that. You sound really educated. You sound really intelligent. You're like, yeah, as opposed to what?
Yeah, I used to. I still today. I listen to something like this. People say something like this because I was raised in a upper middle class family, and even when I speak English, I met some black guys, some African Americans, and they say, "Yeah, man, but you don't speak as we say in Portuguese, the ebonish.
Yeah,
You speak like your English is it's normal. What does it mean exactly? What does normal mean? Because only because I'm black, I'm supposed to speak in a certain way.
right.
Uh, so in Brazil, it happens the same. Because I don't use certain slangs. For some black people, I'm not as black as they are. So what's the point? Only because I don't speak in a certain way, I'm not as black as another guy who doesn't even know where Africa is in the map.
Right. Right. No, the whole thing is absurd. I remember in the corporate world, sometimes, let's say there was a intramural basketball league, right? Sometimes they have that where it's one basketball team versus another, just different corporate offices. People would always be like, oh, we got so and so on the team, right? Because they just assume the one black guy in the office has to be a good basketball player, right? And he must be
Yeah,
Eddie Murphy too. So it's like the stereotype is like, oh yeah, every black guy is funny, every black guy can dance, and every black guy can play basketball. Those are the three stereotypes that they tell them all the time. It's like, man, you can't dance? You're a black man, you can't dance? What's wrong with you? It's in your blood.
it still happens all the time. It happened to a friend of mine at one of this. It was an American company, by the way. Used to work there. Was a managerial trainee, and someone at the elevator asked her, "Hey, please, could you show me how to dance samba?" Uh, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
What does it mean exactly? I mean, and it happens to this day. Whenever I go out, I go to a nightclub, they expect me to dance. When I travel abroad, only because I'm Brazilian, they ask me about soccer and then invite me to play soccer. I don't even like to play it anymore. I used to play when I was younger, but nowadays I'm more into martial arts, lifting weights,
Yeah.
and basketball is the same. Here in Brazil, basically, it's dancing, basketball, capoeira, what else, and soccer. So if you are black, you're supposed to be good at everything regarding these four topics.
Yeah. But that also explains why so many athletes in Brazil have such great footwork because of that football upbringing and the capoeira. A lot of Brazilians that are fighters, for example, move really well. And I think it's having that
Yeah.
strong foundation, especially with footwork, because that's so crucial. If you don't have any footwork, then you're going to be a terrible fighter.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, capoeira, it's as you may know, like it's an African Brazilian fighting style. It's
Right.
quite beautiful. I used to practice when I was younger, and it some guys in jiu-jitsu they come from a capoeira background, and the way they move, it's perfect.
Yeah.
The skills that you acquire are quite good for most sports. As you said, the footwork, the balance, the way you move your body and the way you understand yourself and yourself in relation to others,
Right.
the way they move, the way you move, the way you react. So capoeira is awesome. It's beautiful.
I think it's good for everyone to do some kind of sport which improves your mobility, improves your movement. And whatever it is that you're into, whether it's dancing or jujitsu, whatever it is, I like skateboarding a lot because skateboarding to me is the exact opposite of weight training. Weight training is all tension, right? It's getting your body tight to lift heavy weights. So if you only do that, your body's going to start getting tight. That's just going to happen. But something like
Yeah.
skateboarding is the exact opposite. If you tighten up, you go flying off the board or you lose control. You have to be really loose and fluid. Your hips have to be relaxed. And one thing I like about using an Indo board with people is that you assess quite a few things about someone when they're on an Indo board. One, how tight they are, because the first thing most people try to do is they tighten up. They think if they really root themselves, the boards, they're not going to go flying off the board, when that actually causes you to go flying off the board. So then you have to learn how to relax and let go, because a lot of people have control issues too, especially those of us that engage in weight training, because that's all about controlling the movement at each segment of it. But on an Indo board, you have to go with it. You have to go with that flow. Then you learn how to control it later. Then you can slow it down and just keep it still. But initially, you go wherever it goes and just get comfortable with that. But it's amazing
And
people get into a fear-based response. They get on it and you can see
yeah.
the fear right away. And I go, that is what's going to cause you to go flying off. Because the same thing happens when I go skateboarding. If I'm making a corner, if I'm making a turn real sharp, and I'm like, whoa, uh-oh, you're like, I got it. It's just yelling out affirmations, that is different. So you got to stay, it's counterintuitive, because when something difficult happens, we automatically tighten up. Our breathing becomes shallow and we get tense. But it's really the opposite that you need to do in situations like that. And I think that's one of the cool things about jiu-jitsu in particular, is that it really teaches that, because you can't just use strength in jiu-jitsu. That works against
Exactly.
you. Strength works for you everywhere else. Where you need to pick up something heavy, strength's important. But in jiu-jitsu, you try to muscle your way around. That just makes you fodder for whoever you're rolling with. That person's gonna just clean your clock in no time.
Yeah, that's crazy about jiu-jitsu, because that's exactly what made me become addicted to it. Because most guys are always being pretty strong. Like I'm around 5'11" and a half, 205 pounds,
Yeah.
and I was pretty athletic. I used to practice judo, boxing, and when I went to jiu-jitsu, I say, "Oh, this is gonna be easy." And then a girl half my size, she just kicked my ass, half my size, and I said, "Oh man, so your boxing, judo, lifting weights, everything, it's worthless here." And most big guys, they quit jiu-jitsu because of their ego, because of it, and that's exactly what made me stay, because I say, if that girl can do that to
Yeah.
me, is
Yeah.
because it works. And the thing about being relaxed is that I was usually tense. I used to hold my breath when as soon as I started training jiu-jitsu, and it's quite of counterintuitive that you have to relax, you have to control your breath, to be mindful of what you're doing. And in some ways, jiu-jitsu for me is just like meditation, but under pressure.
Yeah. 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 It's like a chess game with physical consequences, because there's so
Yeah.
many variables to go there. And when you're not trained in it, you leave so many tells. So you're thinking, I've had the same experience you've had. I've rolled with people that are way smaller than me, men and female. And before I even think about how to defend, all of a sudden I'm caught in something. I was like, how did that happen? I just put my arm right here, and then all of a sudden shoulders around my neck, and I'm tapping out. So it's definitely an ego killer, but I think that's a good thing. I think it's good to try things and not be good at it at all, and then see how committed you are, because a lot of times as people get older, you don't want to try anything where you're starting from zero again. You want things to come easy to you now. You're like, hey, I've been around for a while. Things should come easy to me. That kind of mentality. So when you try something new and you're terrible at it, most people are going to become demoralized. They never come back. But the few that stick around, in addition to picking up all those skill sets of just training in jiu-jitsu, there's so much value that's going to carry over to everything else you do. Your mentality, your mood, your drive.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just interesting to learn that stuff about yourself. So I think like when people say, oh, this person makes me feel insecure, or this person's so strong and fit, I feel inadequate. I go, those are good things. Those are good things. You should feel inadequate. It's good to feel inadequate. You don't want to feel inadequate where you don't think you have any self-worth and you want to kill yourself. But it's good to see someone else excelling at something you want, and then feel inadequate, but also inspired, because at the same time, this person's at a much higher level, but if they can do it, then I can do it too. I can definitely improve.
Yeah, this is exactly what has been happening lately, because the last time I trained jiu-jitsu before moving back to Brazil was in February in Poland. And then I started training again 2 months ago here in São Paulo, at probably arguably the best team on the planet. It's hard to say the best, but with most Hall of Famers, most history, most world titles. And this was, it was really hard, because every sparring session after I left, I said, man, do I really want to do it all over again? Because I'm out of shape. I think correctly, but my body is not responding, because if you don't practice jiu-jitsu, it's not that you forget, but you are not as fast and as precise as you should be.
Yeah.
And I talk to myself and say, oh, listen, man, this is a good thing. Now you really have to prove if you love jiu-jitsu, because it's easy to say that you love it when everything is going fine, you are crushing it. But now when you're training with the best guys, hard sparring, and now is the time to prove if you really want it, because time to show discipline, because if you rely on motivation, listen, at my previous job, one of my bosses, he asked me, hey, Fabio, what do you think about motivation? He knew that I was driven, always into sports, meditation, etc. And I said, do you really want to know what I think about motivation? Are you sure? I said, listen, boss, if you ever go to to where I train jiu-jitsu and you ask my friends, or you talk about motivation to them, you're going to lose all your credibility. They're going to stare at you and say, what the fuck are you talking about? Because you don't get motivated to do something that if you have a hard training session the next day, it's hard to get out of bed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if you rely on the motivation, you're not going to do it. It's about discipline. It's about drive. It's about something inside you. Yeah. And so if you whenever I see something or watch a video about motivation, I don't even start watching it. Because as you said in one of your videos, you don't have to rely on motivation. You have to rely on discipline.
Yeah.
And jiu-jitsu is about it, jiu-jitsu and life. And I usually say that jiu-jitsu doesn't pay my bills, because I'm going to compete next year, but I'm not a competitor. I have a full-time job. But it does, on the other hand, it does pay my bills, because it makes me better at everything that I do. So it doesn't pay my bills, but it does, because it makes me better. It makes me stronger, the way I approach life, challenges, and everything else.
That's a perfect way to look at it. It definitely carries over. It's interesting how things that don't seem interrelated at all really do carry over. And I think what it comes down to is every time you get better at one skill set, even if it's something completely different than another, it still carries over, because you've learned a learning process there. You've learned how to pick up a new skill. And improving is always picking up a little bit of nuanced skill, just getting a little bit better at stuff, constantly trying to improve. I mean, for me, with good deadlift technique, that took years to develop. And that's a basic movement. That's just a hinge and lifting a bar off the ground. That's not technical. I mean, to someone on the outside, it's not a technical lift. For someone who is really good at it, it's a very technical lift. It's learning how to drop your hips and rip the bar off the ground and time everything perfectly. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere. You're going to get injured. So there's always ways. You can never be so good at something that you can't improve. And I think that's a good thing. It's good that there's always room to improve, because what's the point of doing anything if you're not trying to improve? Yeah. I don't get excited about maintaining. I don't go to the gym to maintain. I want to improve things. I want to get better at something.
Can I ask you a question? Because regarding the deadlift, I think in one of your podcasts with Sincere Hogan, you were saying something that you had to change your approach to the deadlift after you went to Mark Philippi or something, gyms.
Yeah.
Is that true? Can you talk
a
little bit about it?
Taught me a technique that's really interesting. He uses a very pronounced leg drive when he deadlifts. So I always look at the deadlift as a back exercise with leg assistance, right? While a barbell squat is a leg exercise with back assistance. So with the deadlift, people tend to focus on pulling with their back, because they think it's a back exercise. So they have no leg drive off the floor. They just grab the bar, slight knee bend, and then they just try to lift the bar off the ground. Now, when you apply a leg drive where you drop your hips really low, bend your elbows a little bit so you can drop even lower. Now, once your arms straighten out, you rip the bar off the ground. So you get a strong leg drive that's going to make the bar pop those first couple inches. So from the floor to, let's say, maybe shin level, that technique is going to get the bar moving to that area. And then you use your back to finish it off. But you're not using your back primarily in the most dangerous part of the lift, which is off the ground. So when you see someone who's a back deadlifter, what happens? Once they get heavy enough, they have really excessive rounding. And a little bit of rounding is going to happen. Like my upper back rounds when I do heavy lifts, but my lower back doesn't round. So it's not like it doesn't look like a banana as I'm trying to stand up. Sure. And as a result, my lower back is protected during the most dangerous part of the lift. But from a performance standpoint, I'm engaging the legs a great deal. And that's why when I started working on the hammer strength iso squat machine, when I started doing some leg presses, those motions really carried over to the deadlift for that leg drive that I just mentioned. So now I'm really big on those, because I do barbell squats from time to time, but I never found barbell squat to carry over to the deadlift or vice versa. Other people have. And with me, maybe it's because I use a fairly wide stance when I squat and I use a close stance when I deadlift. But I remember I focused on just squats for a while. I cut out deadlifts for 3 months. I did that small off squat routine, which is a great routine. It really increased my strength on the squat. And everyone's going, oh, yeah, you don't have to deadlift. When you go back to deadlifting, you'll probably be stronger. And I go, cool, I can't wait for that to happen. So I went back to deadlift, and I couldn't even lift 500 pounds, which is what I could do that for reps before this whole thing. I was like, wait a minute, what happened here? I'm stronger on the squat, but I'm weaker on the deadlift. And it just goes to show you how much specificity there is in everything. Things have some carryover to each other, but if you want to get really good at one thing, you have to focus on that. I mean, for example, if you want to get really good at jiu-jitsu, you focus on jiu-jitsu. You don't try to elevate your yoga game. You don't try to take your yoga game to the next level and not train jiu-jitsu at all and then expect it to carry over. Going, oh, I move so much better now, it's going to make a big difference. I remember Steve Maxwell said that he went through a period where he didn't train jiu-jitsu for a while. He was traveling and he was just doing a lot of kettlebell work, and he thought that would keep his conditioning on point. And when he started rolling again, he was shocked how tired he got. He's like, man, I was dying. And after the first minute, where in the past that wasn't a problem. So, I mean, the conditioning you need for jiu-jitsu, sure, doing other things is important for that, but doing the actual practice is what's going to give you the most precise conditioning for what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as soon as I went back to jiu-jitsu a few weeks ago, and I asked my head coach, listen, I'm gassing out. I haven't been training. Last time I trained was in February. So what should I do? Run? He said, no, you should train more jiu-jitsu.
That's what Franco Colombo, my favorite bodybuilders from the golden era. Really interesting guy. I had the good fortune to talk to him a couple times when I lived in Los Angeles. Really interesting guy because he used to be a chiropractor out there. Up until the day he died, he still had that chiropractic office over there in Westwood in Los Angeles. So I remember a friend of mine recommended I go to him for an adjustment. And I was like, wow, I didn't even realize he was practicing as a chiropractor at this stage in his life. So I went just to meet him. I go, look, I'll go for the benefit you just mentioned, but I just want to meet this guy because I've been a big fan of his for a long time. But he said he had a couple sayings that were really funny, like forced reps. He would always say forced reps are better if you do them on your own. That was his one thing. And he goes for improving. He goes, what else besides squats? What else do you do to improve your legs? He goes, oh, I do more squats. So he was always very in keeping things simple because the funny thing is exercises that are really difficult, squats and deadlifts are difficult, especially when you get heavy. People will always look for an alternative to those if they can. What can I do instead of those that's going to carry over? And other things will help to some extent, but nothing is going to give you the results except doing the exact motion yourself. You have to engage in that.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. Regarding this whole after you change your approach to the deadlift, to the straight bar deadlift.
Yeah.
How was for you when you tried to use the trap bar deadlift?
Trap bar is there's definitely carryover between the two, but I find that my barbell deadlift carries over to trap bar more than the other way around. Mm-hmm. And barbell actually feels more comfortable for me than a trap bar. And during the pandemic, when all the gyms were shut down, I have a really nice trap bar at the house. So I was using that quite a bit. And for some reason, that neutral grip was causing pain to just shoot up my bicep and my shoulder. So I stopped doing it for that reason. But before that happened, I found that a trap bar feels just like a standing leg press. It's way more leg drive and way less stress on your lower back. So for the average person, trap bar makes a lot of sense. The barbell deadlift is awesome, but there's a lot of room to make mistakes there that can really make your back jacked up. Even when you do something a little bit off, you feel it in your back, like, uh-oh, my back's off. So you have to be really precise. While the trap bar is way more forgiving. Your weight is in your center of mass. So right there, your back is not strained. And now you can focus on the leg drive. You're in this neutral grip. Yep. So they definitely carry over. When I deadlifted 585 pounds for the first time, I was doing trap bar twice a week and then barbell deadlift twice a week. And I especially liked the trap bar for more repetitions. So anything 5 reps, I prefer the trap bar because I can just get into a nice rhythm with the trap bar. Mm-hmm. I got to the heavier weights though, then I prefer the barbell deadlift because I can really root myself in there and I can pull the bar into me. One thing I do is I always wear those socks, those long socks, because the barbell is pulled into my shins. So I keep it as close to my center of mass as possible. Not pulled in so forcefully that it slows down the motion, but closer you get it to your body, the better. And a lot of people, what happens is you see they start with the bar way too far in front of them. So when they lift, it's a couple inches in front and then they're adjusting and their back's now in a really dangerous position. With the trap bar, you don't make those mistakes. So I like trap bar for beginners and I like trap bar for people who don't care about improving their barbell deadlift, or they're not going to compete or they just don't have any interest in getting stronger on that, but they want some of the benefits without the negatives. And I think trap bar makes a lot of sense for a variety of people. But I think that if you only did trap bar, your barbell deadlift's going to go down. And if you only do barbell deadlift, I think your trap bar is not going to be as strong as it could be. But in my case, I find more carryover from barbell to trap bar. Other people are different though, so I can't say that's a universal rule.
Yep. I was using the trap bar for a couple of months, and when I went back to the straight bar, my weights went way down. So for me, there's no carryover at all.
Yeah, I found the same thing when I first started doing trap bar. I got a trap bar years ago, 2009 or so, and I remember I devoted that was my primary leg exercise for months. I didn't do anything else, just that. No barbell squats, no barbell deadlift. And my numbers started getting pretty good, and I was all excited. I go, man, I bet my barbell deadlift's way better now. And it was way weaker. Everything felt off because the technique cues, I mean, superficially, it looks very similar, but the way it feels to someone who's experienced with both lifts is totally different. It's a totally different feeling. And then there's certain things that you forget to do on a barbell deadlift if you're only doing trap bar and vice versa. And I think that's part of the reason why it always feels so much heavier. But also it feels so much heavier because now your central nervous system is tuned in to doing the trap bar. And the barbell deadlift is different enough that it takes a while for your mind to reset and use it with the same effectiveness. So I think ideally you should do both. If you want to improve both, you should do both. And I like the deadlift 4 times a week, which sounds like a lot, but people have to realize I'm not doing maximum intensity. I'm doing 70 to 80% at the most, just for a couple of sets. And that's just to prime my nervous system so that my technique is on point and I get really comfortable. Because I always found if I deadlifted once a week, my strength didn't really go up because it was too much time. 7 days between each session, even if you did high volume, it's too much time. And you find that you waste a lot of time with those warm-up sets in terms of getting into a groove. But if you do it 4 times a week, I mean, the second you grab the bar, you're in a groove. And one thing you notice is that everything feels faster the more often you do it. Everything feels more fluid, and it feels faster, and it feels way more dialed in, more comfortable, more locked in. So I think like anything, if you play the piano once a week versus even if you play for 4 hours, you play the piano for 4 hours on Monday, then you don't do it again until the following Monday. That's not going to be as effective as 30 minutes every single day.
Yeah, that's true. Consistency is the key. I mean, when you said that you deadlift 4 times a week, the first thing I thought was that it's just like practicing a musical instrument or martial arts. So basically, you're developing a skill. So your body and your mind, your brain get used to this movement pattern. You get more efficient. Hence, you can increase training weight over time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, the guy who really dialed this in, because I was familiar with high frequency growing up. There was a famous program based on Bulgarian weightlifting techniques. The guy, Leo Costa, Sincere and I had him on the podcast years ago. So what was the name of that program? I think it was called Big Beyond Belief, all these really corny names that they came up with back then. Totally targeted to an impressionable teenager like me. Hey, I want to be big beyond belief. Let's get that book. So corny, over the top marketing. But he talked about the reason why the Bulgarian weightlifters are so strong is the frequency of what they do. They do the lifts 5 times a day, 6 days a week. And they don't train anywhere close to failure, though. It's all practice. And then they also get massages after each session, just 10 minutes, get all the inflammation out. Their diet obviously is on point. And also these are gifted athletes. The fact that they're competing at an Olympic level, these are already genetically gifted athletes to start with. But it was that frequency that got them really dialed in. So what he tried to do was take that approach of a high frequency weightlifting program and apply it to bodybuilding. And I don't think it's that effective for bodybuilding, because bodybuilding is more about break it the fuck down and then let it build back up. Break it down, build back up. So that takes time. So the way you train for strength versus hypertrophy, getting as big as possible, those are 2 different paths. And I think you can have a little bit of carryover one way or the other. But if I were trying to make my body as big as possible, I wouldn't train the way I do now. The way I train now is going to have minimal impact on muscle size, but maximum impact on performance. Meaning you're going to get stronger and more efficient, and your performance is going to go way up without your body necessarily changing at all. Certainly not just getting massive and all that. Because I don't want to have too much size. I'm not the most athletic guy, but I like to be able to move around. I want to be able to go sprinting and hiking and skateboarding and snowboarding, do other things. I don't want to be someone who is only good at lifting heavy weights, and that's all I'm good at. I have no mobility. I have no fluidity. Heavy on your feet. I don't like that feeling of being really heavy on my feet. And at my frame, like I'm about 200 pounds right now. I feel strong. I'm lean. I feel athletic. But last year I was around maybe 212 at certain points of the year. And I felt really strong at that weight. I mean, everything felt light. You just felt like a gorilla lifting weights. Everything's flying off the ground. But my conditioning was just not there. I felt heavy on my feet. I mean, running, when I would try to go running at that size, I didn't feel like I was moving. I'm trying to run as fast as possible. It probably looked like this.
Gorilla running, right?
Because I look like a transformer running down the field. I mean, totally uncoordinated, like, no technique at all. But when I'm at this weight, I have the right combination of athleticism and strength. And honestly, if I wanted to be way faster and more athletic, I would be better off even lighter, maybe 180 pounds. At that weight, I'm going to feel like a gazelle running down the field, but I'm not going to be that strong. So there's always a trade-off here. So I think, yeah, where I'm at right now is just a balance. It's a balance of both. But if I wanted to excel in one direction or the other, I would have to change things.
Yeah, you walk around 205, right? 206.
Yeah, now I'm a little bit lighter than that. Now I weighed myself this morning. I was just 200 pounds on the button, which is pretty light for me. But I feel really strong at this weight too. I feel like my strength is, in some things, way more so than last year, even though I was at a heavier body weight. But I feel healthier. And when this whole pandemic started, last year I had this horrible flu. I mean, it felt like COVID in terms of the symptoms I had. I mean, 2 weeks, I was deathly ill.
Damn.
And it wasn't getting better. I mean, after a week of being super sick, just sleeping all day, could barely eat, definitely wasn't exercising at all because I couldn't even talk without coughing. And after a week, it wasn't getting any better. And I was like, damn, man, what did I catch here? Because usually when you have a bad flu or a cold, it sucks for a couple of days and then you start feeling better. At least you feel like you're getting better. Here, I didn't feel like I was getting better at all. So I actually had to have a nurse practitioner come over to my house because I didn't want to go to an emergency room that sick. And I was too sick to even get in the car and drive anywhere. So I found this service where a nurse practitioner will come over to your home and they'll give you emergency room treatment in the comfort of your living room. So everything that I would have done at an emergency room, I had done at the house. Because I knew I needed medical intervention at this point. Just taking oil of oregano and vitamin C wasn't going to cut it. This was more serious. I had pneumonia before, and I knew it was heading in that direction. It was a flu that turned into pneumonia. Pneumonia is deathly. It's not something you can just rest and get over with. You need treatment when you have pneumonia. So she put me on hardcore antibiotics and some other medications. And suffice to say, it worked. It kicked that out. But that experience took a serious toll on my cardiovascular system. And I think the antibiotics made things worse because the antibiotics are necessary to get rid of the infection. But usually one of the side effects of really strong antibiotics is it zaps your energy. I mean, you're just wiped out. So the combination of that and the antibiotics, it took months before I felt normal. I mean, my strength came back pretty fast because strength is you lift something heavy for a couple of reps, you take a 5-minute break if you need to, or a 3-minute break. So I was able to pace myself. I would be coughing in between sets, but I was able to pace myself. But conditioning, even kettlebell swings for anything more than 10 reps, forget it. I had no wind whatsoever. Even when I would walk my dogs around the neighborhood, I would be coughing anytime we came to a hill. And it went on like that for months. And then you were talking about Europe. I went to Europe last year. I went to London last year in April, teach a course out there. And then I went hiking with a friend of mine, an avid hiker. So she's in super great shape. She does triathlons and all that. But I mean, I was dying walking up these mountains. I was dying. The worst was one mountain I was walking up and these 2 older ladies passed me and then they're all cheering me on at the top. They're like, come on, you can do it. You can do it. Oh my God.
That's demoralizing.
Strike me with lightning right now. I go, now this is a low point where I've got 2 women that are probably in their early 60s trying to make up this mountain.
The lowest of the lowest, man.
Oh, that was pretty low. So I knew my cardiovascular training had to be a priority once I got home. I knew that for sure. And I also knew that me carrying that much muscle mass, especially after that nasty flu and so forth, I wasn't doing myself any favors. Because I think even if I didn't have all of that, I think I still would have found it difficult because there's only a certain weight you can carry on a frame before it becomes counterproductive. You see that with UFC fighters sometimes. They go up a weight class and they're way heavier, but now they're way slower and they're getting tired. And then you see them do the opposite, like that Cannonier we were talking about who's fighting this weekend. I think he used to fight at heavyweight. He definitely fought at light heavyweight because he was a guy for a while. Yeah, and he had a good amount of body fat and his conditioning wasn't all that great at that weight. But now he's shredded. I mean, now he's full 6-pack. He's lean. He's mean. He's got great conditioning. So the body weight he's at now it induces way more athleticism than being at that heavier weight where he probably felt stronger in terms of his ability to move people around. But if you can't last, then now you have to win every fight in the first couple of minutes. Otherwise, it's over. If it goes into the second round.
Just like Mike Tyson.
Yeah. 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 Mike Tyson was dangerous for the first minute. And often, and I grew up during the Mike Tyson era. So when I grew up in the 90s, early 90s, and that was when Mike Tyson was, everyone thought he was a god. I mean, we all thought he was like, wow, Mike Tyson's fighting. We got to watch it. It was a spectacle. And you would have 20 people over at someone's house to watch this fight. You're waiting all night to watch it, and then it's over in 10 seconds. He would just go and knock someone out with just for ferocious intensity. I mean, it was frightening to watch. When he unloaded on somebody, it was frightening to watch how fast and just violent it was. It made boxing really exciting. Everybody wanted to watch that. But it was, it's like you said, it's if you get him into the deeper rounds, though, it's a different fighter now because he's so fast twitch. He's so muscular and fast twitch. And the thing about people that are fast twitch, they can generate a lot of power for a brief amount of time, but then it's over. I mean, it goes to zero.
Yeah, you cannot be both. I mean, it's for example, if you consider Khabib, he's the opposite. His conditioning is second to none. He can go for if he could fight 50 rounds, he would do it.
Oh yeah.
And for example, Conor McGregor is more fast twitch like, so he gets this out as soon as after the third round. He's usually dead. He's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's a different type of fighter.
Yeah. Really muscular guys tend to be really fast twitch. A lot of women tend to be more slow twitch, which is why women generally have way better endurance than most guys. They build endurance faster, obviously a higher pain threshold, given that women are the ones who give birth. If the average guy gave birth, he would die. You know, the first guy to give birth, that guy would die from it. He wouldn't make it. Like, just kill me now. You know? But when I was training at Mark Phillippe's gym, he would make fun of me because I remember at one time I couldn't deadlift 480 or trap bar deadlift. I couldn't do one rep with 490, but I was able to do 10 reps with 450 or something like that. And he's like, man, he's like, you have muscle fibers like a woman. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, you're really slow twitch, because to take 40 pounds off a lift that you couldn't do once, and now you're big and get out for reps like it's nothing. That's more slow twitch than fast twitch. And that's why people know me as the strength guy, but in reality, endurance comes to me a lot faster than strength training does. It takes a lot of effort for me to get strong. I mean, I've been working on getting strong since I was a teenager. I'm 47 now. And I can get strong for sure, but it took a long time to figure out how to use my body with the muscle fiber type to get the strength. While endurance, I mean, the first time I ever tried snatching a kettlebell, I mean, within maybe the first week, I was snatching a 90-pound kettlebell for sets of 10, no problem, just banging it out. When I did Hindu squats and Hindu push-ups, I mean, I worked up to over 1,000 Hindu squats pretty fast. I mean, within a couple of weeks. And people would ask me, they go, how did you work up to that? And I go, I just did more reps every day. That was my only response. It just came fast to me. And other people tried it, and it just didn't come fast to them. So we all have a certain muscle fiber type that is unique to us.
Yeah, for me, I've always been the fast twitch guy. So endurance comes hard, and that's something that bothers me whenever I train jiu-jitsu because I'm quite explosive, strong, but considering endurance-wise, that's not my strength. So I have to be very strategic in the way I approach my game because I'm there to train jiu-jitsu, not to use only my strength. I have to develop different approaches. Of course, my endurance improves. The more I train, the more my endurance improves. Nonetheless, I'll never be the guy who can spar for several hours without getting wasted. That's not me. That's not me at all.
Yeah, those kind of things it's not easy to build that when it doesn't come naturally because it's so alien to you. And we tend to gravitate towards things that we get better at faster. For me, though, it was the opposite. When I first started lifting weights, I was so weak. I mean, I couldn't even bench press 90 pounds. I mean, I got pinned with 90 pounds and I had to flip it off one side to get up. And this was when I was like 17 or something like that. So it's not like I started with this genetic gift of strength and fitness before I started training. I had no strength whatsoever. But that actually motivated me. I go, man, I'm really terrible at this. I go, I want to get good at it now. So let me put in some effort. And then who knew all these years later, I'm still working on this because it caught on. I think it became really easily because some of my friends back then, it came really easy for them. They would be bench pressing 250 pounds and all that in no time at all. But once it became, and that's an okay lift, but it's not an exceptional lift. So to go from that to exceptional, though, I don't care who you are, that's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of discipline and a lot of effort, like you said, the discipline being key. And what would happen is when the gains came fast, everybody's excited. Like, oh man, I love working out. Every time I work out, I'm stronger. It's like, who wouldn't love that? But once it slowed down where you go a whole month and you haven't improved anything, even though if you stay with it for another month, you're going to shoot right up. But during that month where you're not improving anything, a lot of people get demoralized because they're so attached to results.
Yes.
And in Hinduism, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says you have a right to your actions, but not the results of your actions. And as a kid, especially growing up in the Western world, I go, that sounds like the dumbest thing ever. Why would I act without enjoying the outcome? And it wasn't about that. It was, don't be so focused on the results that you dissipate energy during the process. Because if you excel during the process, you put in your best effort. You're not even worried about where it's going to go. You're just putting in maximum effort in the process phase. The results are going to take care of itself. You don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, the NFL former NFL coach, Hall of Famer Bill Walsh, he used to say that the score takes care of itself. So that's basically it. You have to focus on the process to be in the moment. In Zen, I used to be a Zen Buddhist practitioner. So the approach is similar to Hinduism in the way that you have to be in the moment, focus on what you have to do right here, right now. Of course, you do have goals, but unless you give yourself completely to what you have to do right now, nothing's going to happen.
Right. All you have is the present. So if you're not present in the present, then you're not going to have the best outcome, and then your future is not going to be that great either. So it's the whole thing spirals.
Yeah, exactly. And the Western mind usually doesn't work like that, so I had to learn it the hard way. Yeah. Probably you have this contact with Hinduism because your mom was from India, right?
Yes.
So how was it for you? I mean, living in the States and having this other way to see the world. How was it?
I mean, I didn't think about it too much at the time, but now looking back, I see what a pronounced impact it had on me, because while other kids were reading Superman comics and Batman and stuff like that, my mother was giving me Mahabharata comics, based on Hindu philosophy and so forth. So I'm looking at all these Hindu gods with incredible strength, doing amazing acts of heroism and so forth. And I didn't think about it at the time, but a lot of these heroes in these comic books looked like me. I mean, I looked like them and they looked like me way more so than Superman did or Batman or all these other white heroes. So at the time, I didn't think about it, but that definitely had an indelible effect on me, because I'm reading these comics going, okay, I have the blood of these kind of people running through me, so I can go on and achieve all these amazing things. I mean, just in my psychology. But also growing up, I didn't grow up, because my father's white and my father's American, so I didn't grow up with traditional Indian values, for lack of a better word. So I didn't grow up with a strong Indian identity at all. I was more raised as a white person. There was more influence from my father than my mother in terms of the upbringing. Like, I don't speak any languages from India or anything like that. So it became something that I took upon myself to be important. That's why I have a degree in religious studies, because I really wanted to understand my heritage more than anything else. That's where it started, with Hinduism and Buddhism. And then I branched off into Sufism and things like that I found really interesting. But that was really important to me, because you need to have a sense of identity, especially when, even if you're raised as a white person, if you're not a white person, then it doesn't matter if you're being raised as a white person, because the world is not going to perceive you as that. And that can be really confusing. So you need to know who you are, especially as a young man or a young woman. You need to have a strong sense of identity. And if you get to a certain age and you don't have that, then I think you can become really self-destructive. So and then my mother was a lifelong vegetarian. She was a Hindu and she didn't eat any meat and all that. So I grew up eating meat, but I saw I saw the way she ate, and her food always tasted way better than what she made for the rest of us. So I started gravitating towards that. So she had a big influence on me in multiple ways. And then I listened to one of my favorite bands growing up was the Cro-Mags, and the Cro-Mags were, yes, they were heavily influenced by Vedic philosophy, Hare Krishnas primarily, but that's a branch of Hinduism, so the philosophy is similar. And that's so I'm listening to music like that, and I'm seeing Hindu artwork on album covers. And at that time, I wasn't even making the connection of, yeah, I'm half Indian and these people are influenced by my heritage and all that. I wasn't even thinking on that level. But now looking back, I see it that way. So it was this convergence of all these events that helped shape my identity. And I think as a biracial person, it can be even more confusing because let's say you're half black and you're half white, but most people that are half black and half white look more black than white.
Yeah,
and most of them identify as black for obvious reasons because that's the way the world is perceiving you. So I've never met someone who's half black who doesn't look more black than white, meaning like, oh, wow, I didn't realize you were half black. You look totally white.
Same
I know
here.
Examples of that out there, but you don't see that too often. So what happens
Not.
there is that can be confusing too. Like I knew people in high school that were half black, half white, but they grew up in white environments, the really wealthy white high school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so they basically think they're white. They think they're part of this club. But then they go to another college in another state, or they go to the Midwest for a while, and all of a sudden they're being perceived in a much different manner. And that can be shocking to a lot of people because they're like, wait a minute, I thought I was part of this club, and now I'm not part of this club. So
that's true. That's true.
With your Buddhism, let's talk about that a little bit. Actually, let's talk about your traveling a lot because I want to get into that.
Yeah.
Now, you've traveled all over the world. You said you've been to Poland, you've been to South Africa, you've been to Australia, you've been all over the USA. How did this whole process start for you? What motivated you to want to be an international traveler?
I mean, since I was quite young, I was curious. I wanted to learn about everything about the world. And my first trip abroad was an exchange program to South Africa. The reason I chose South Africa was because coming from an African family, I wanted to go to a place where I could meet people from all over Africa and still have be able to learn to improve my English skills. Hence, I decided to go to South Africa, and it was quite interesting because I could learn. You travel, you go to another continent, but you go there to find yourself in some. For me, at least for me, it was like this. I could learn more about myself, about who I was. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged to something when I was in Africa. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of racism in South Africa, but there I could, as I told you before, after I started recording, I was raised in one of the in the south of Brazil, in a mostly European city with mostly white friends, and there I could one of the first periods of my life where I could be around more blacks than whites. For me, it was amazing. Don't get me wrong; it's not because I was raised among whites that I didn't have this understanding about where I came from. Because of my parents, they are well-read, educated people. They showed me about they taught me about African history. Always gave me books, Christmas, birthday. I could read about Pan Africanism, Malcolm X, Mandela, Steve Biko, Marcus Garvey, etc. So I could learn about my African heritage since I was quite young, and that made me in the eighth grade. I had to present something about whatever country I could I could choose, and I decided to make a presentation about South Africa, about the apartheid. And you can say, like, for our children, the only black guy in the school presenting for mostly white people, white and Asian people, about this is because this was really strong for me. I had the balls to do it. So that's basically me. I was always trying to find who I was, trying to build my identity. I believe that we have to at some point transcend that,
Yeah.
because it's not because I'm black that I have, oh, you are black, so you have to, your economic views should be this way, your political views should be that way. No, that's not me. I don't buy, purchase ideas in a package. I
Right.
try to by myself. Uh, so basically, that made me go to South Africa. And in 2011, I live in New York, the United States, for a few months. Then I traveled to the West Coast as well, because one of my closest friends, he was born in Brazil, but he got his green card a few years ago. So he lives in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah.
But in New York, it was quite nice because for the first time I could go to a fancy store and feel to feel that I was perceived as a potential customer. What I mean is that if I go to a fancy store here in Brazil, usually the security guys and everyone else, it doesn't matter how I'm dressed, they're gonna stare at me. They don't. No one usually tries to approach me. And it happened sometimes that, oh, we don't have the cheapest one for you.
Oh,
Are you
boy.
sure you want to buy something here? And in New York, of course, in the United States, racism is strong. In Brazil, it's strong as well. Even though most Brazilians that travel abroad, they try to sell something else. We can talk about it afterwards, and I'll explain to you why. In New York, I went to Harlem, and then for me was, oh man, this is it. Don't get me wrong, it is dangerous, but
Yeah.
if you live in Brazil, it's okay, you know.
Yeah.
And lots of African Americans, and then I felt welcome again. Hey brother, how's it going? And I felt part of something, and something happened. I was living in Brooklyn, and there was some white Brazilians, and they said something close to me. They didn't know I wasn't American. So
Wow.
they said, we went to Harlem, yeah, one of these days last week, and it was weird. Only mostly black people over there. I thought, what the hell were they talking about? I mean, they people believe that, oh, Brazil is a multicultural, multi-ethnical country. It is, but there's still segregation depending on where, if you're upper middle class, probably even if you go to the northeast of Brazil. Salvador is the blackest, as we say, blackest capital city in Brazil, is in the northeast. Beautiful city. My grandfather was from there. As most African Brazilians, when there was the slave trade, we were brought mostly to the northeast. So if you go to the northeast, the population is mostly African. And if you go to fancy places in Salvador till this day, there are mostly white people, and people don't think that there is something wrong with it, because they try to tell that we live in a rainbow nation, and I had to travel abroad to feel welcome sometimes.
Right.
So I lived in the States, as I said. Then 2017, I moved to Australia. I was working at a corporate job most of my life, financial industry, tech industry, petrochemical industry, titles, but I was never happy, and I wanted to explore the world again, to risk, to try a new life. Then I went to Australia. It was awesome because I met people from all over the. Poland is mostly white Polish people, like
Right.
not multicultural at all. Australia is the opposite. Australia is here, Polish is the other extreme.
Yeah.
So I could meet people from all over the world.
Were
It
you
was
in were you in Sydney, or where were you in
I,
Australia?
I lived in two cities, Perth, in the west coast.
Sure. Yeah.
Then I moved to Melbourne. Melbourne was awesome because I could meet great friends. My business partner nowadays, Brazilian guy that I met in Melbourne, a close friend. I'm building this internet business with him here in Brazil. I
Okay.
met in Melbourne. I also met my ex girlfriend, the girl that the reason that I moved to Poland was because of this girl.
Yeah.
And the experience that I had, even though I come from Brazil, jiu-jitsu is it's mostly it's a Brazilian martial arts, it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It was developed here, but there I had the best experience with BJJ that I ever had, because I could meet the coach that I had there at the Absolute team in Melbourne, Lachlan Giles. He's one of the top grapplers on the planet, and the way he approached jiu-jitsu changed the way I approach the sport. Is quite he's quite extremely technical, extremely analytical. He's got a PhD in physiotherapy. So when he used to explain how certain moves would affect the human body, and we are friends to this day. And Australia was quite special, but at some point, since I went there trying to stay there, to immigrate, the rules, the laws changed. Then I decided to go back to Brazil. Went back to Curitiba. I wasn't born there. Curitiba is the city that I was raised in the south. My girlfriend moved to Brazil with me, and at some point we decided, why not go to Poland? I've never been there, but I said, yeah, why not? I knew what people usually say about Eastern European countries regarding the racial relations. I knew that, but right. I said, fuck it, let's do it. I went there. It was probably the hardest place I've ever been to. I mean, it was really, I wouldn't change this experience for anything else at all, because I grew up, I could learn more about myself, and it was the hardest period of my life, but the most important. So I'm quite grateful for the racism and everything else.
How long were you there in Poland?
I were in Warsaw.
Yeah. You were there for a couple of years, or how long were you there?
No, it was for 8 months.
Okay. But that was a long 8 months. Right?
8 months, yeah.
What did you, now your girlfriend, that you're not with this girl anymore, but this was your time. She's from Poland.
Yeah.
And so that provoked you to move back over there. Did you ever meet her parents or her family? What did they think of you? Yeah.
Oh, really nice people, but the thing is, they didn't speak any English at all. So it was mostly, I was trying to learn Polish, but it's hard as fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you move to another country, the least you could do is to try to learn the language.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah.
To respect them.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, their family was really nice people, as far as I could see. But they didn't used to live in Warsaw, so they lived in a small city in Poland. But really nice, hardworking people. Poland was really great. The way I got a job there, I got a job in financial services and asset management company. It's crazy. It's a long story. I'm not going there. So after, after the pandemic started in February, March, I lost my job there, as most people in financial markets, lots of people in financial markets, at least over there. So at some point, I thought, what am I trying to prove here? Because I say, I have to suck it up, stay here longer. Because sometimes you have this mentality that you have to be disciplined, you have to grind, but you also have to be smart. You have to know enough about yourself, to understand enough about yourself to find out that some paths are not for you. Yeah. And as I said before, each and every time that I moved to another country, I could learn more about myself. So I was moving towards myself, even though at some point something in the back of my mind, you're leaving Brazil because of this or because of that. But I was trying to find myself. That's the way I live. I try to learn about myself, about the world. And at some point, I decided to come back to Poland, to Brazil. It was really hard to leave because all the borders were closed. So I had to get a special permission from the Brazilian embassy in Warsaw in order to. My flight was canceled 3 times in 1 month, so I
Wow.
was stuck without a job inside a small apartment in this
Wow.
city center, in the city center of Warsaw,
Yeah.
without trying to find jobs because of, oh, if I don't know when the borders are going to be open again. So at least I'll try to find another job here. It
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't easy. So the reason that made me move there did not exist anymore, because I decided to break up, uh, and I had to go by train from Warsaw to a small city close to the border of Germany, and from there I had to fetch a bus to Berlin, and from Berlin I flew to Amsterdam and then Brazil. So it was really hard to leave Poland. I mean,
Yeah.
physically hard and emotionally as well. So I arrived in Brazil in April. Then I could get a job really fast. I was blessed. Now I'm living for the previous 7 months. I've been living in São Paulo.
Wow. What was your experience with race relations in Poland? Did you deal with a lot of blatant racism?
Yeah, yeah. For example, my last day in Poland, I was waiting for my bus to go to Germany, and
Yeah.
I was approached 3 or 4 times by the police, and they were pretty rough. They asked me to open my suitcase, my briefcase, show my documents. I was the only black guy around, and they didn't do anything with anyone else but me.
Right.
And I can give another example. I usually say that my best experience when I was in Poland was when I went to the Netherlands to meet a close friend because I spent my weekend there. That was my best moment in Poland.
Yeah.
He's probably gonna watch this. So, but a Brazilian guy as well.
Yeah.
And when I went back from this trip, I went there to spend the weekend in Breda. Breda is close to the border with Germany. Really nice city, awesome city, by the way. And when I went back to Poland, I flew back to Poland. As soon as I left the aircraft, the police approached me again, and there were about 200 people, 200 from this airplane and 150 more or less from another airplane. And I was the only guy they stopped. I was the only black guy again. So, and I asked the policeman, "Hey man, what happened? Why are you guys? Why you have you stopped me? Where have you stopped me?" He said, he tried to. No, nothing. He asked to see check my documents again, and not only these things. I mean, the way people look at you when you are black and you're raised, for example, where I was raised, you learn how to perceive, how to the way someone looks at you. You can see where there is prejudice. He doesn't have to beat you up.
Yeah.
You
I know
can you
exactly.
can feel it.
Yeah.
And the way people look at me in Poland was just, I mean, it's I was after I broke up, I was dating a French Canadian girl, and she lived all over the planet as well. And she said, I was making my mind about leaving Poland, and she said, "Hey man, every time you go out, I have to ask you that. How can you do it? Because the way mostly guys look at you here, the way they stare at you is it's aggressive.
Yeah.
How can you cope with it?" I say, "But if I don't relax, if I'm not calm, relaxed, I'm not gonna leave. I have I had to learn how to do it, because even in Brazil it happens. So I had to develop this skill, but in Poland it was way worse than here, because sometimes it's because, okay, you can, as a black man, at least for me, the way I was raised, I can see when it's because they are curious,
Yeah.
or because they simply don't like you because of your skin tone.
Right.
And
Right.
over there it was mostly because you can feel that the hatred, the hate, It was something else for me, something new. And every time I went and lived in another country, besides finding more about myself, I I, I could be able to value more my country, to value to appreciate what Brazil has to offer. Because most people here, lots of people here, I don't like to say most, but they like to complain, oh, because it's dangerous, because this, because that. Yeah, try to be a citizen in another country.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't need to speak the language. You
Right.
know, people like to complain, and that every time I came back, I came back more Brazilian, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to go to another country to reinforce what you feel where you live. You just get a totally different perspective. Is interracial dating common in Brazil, or is it still something that is strange when you? Does it stick out when people see it?
Uh, it depends on where you live. I mean, in the south is more weird. When I used to live in the south, I had interracial relationships. I can tell a story. When I was 13, I had my first love. She was a half Polish, half German, Brazilian girl, but half Polish, half German.
Yeah.
And she was talking about me to her parents, and uh, because my mom is she's quite a famous person. Uh, she's a journalist, and when she told her dad who my mom was, her dad automatic reaction was, "Yeah, but isn't he black?" So it depends on where you go. People have no issues with that. I mean, here in São Paulo, it's more common in the Northeast as well. So it depends on where you go, because there are many Brazils, you know.
Yeah. Well, when I went to school in Ohio, I went to a small town, College of Wooster in Ohio, middle of nowhere. And I worked at a nightclub there, the only nightclub in town, which was on almost on par with the movie Roadhouse in terms of the clientele that came through there. So just kind of a rough group. But one thing I noticed is some of the guys I worked with were they were cool. They were white guys that were cool to black people, but they didn't like any kind of interracial relationships. So in other words, it was, oh yeah, here's a black guy with a black woman. That's okay. Come on in. But if it's a black guy with a white woman, it's like, wait a minute. That's not right. It was like that kind of mentality. And it wasn't always verbalized, but like you said, the look they would give when they
The
saw
look.
the look of like, hey, what are you doing with one of our women type look. So that kind of, so it's like different levels of racism. Now, these are people who would not think they're racist if you brought it up to them. They'd be like, no,
Yeah,
no, racist, no, I love everybody and all that. It's like, yeah, but when you have that kind of response to something that has nothing to do with you, it's none of your business, right? You meet a couple, you don't know them. It's a white woman who you don't know. It's a black guy who you don't know. And then that bothers you in some way. What does that say about you? The fact that you're even bothered by that.
yeah, but I mean, considering what has been going on lately, George Floyd in Brazil, I usually say that there are many George Floyds. There was a new UN report released 1 or 2 years ago. It stated that every 23 minutes, one young black male or female is killed in Brazil.
Mm.
So it's a basically and people here, some if you ask some people, they say no, it's not a racist country. Why why am I talking about this? Because since we've been able to talk more deeply about these issues lately because of what happened in the United States and what's been going on in Brazil, there are some people, even African descendant people, they say that if you don't date someone from your ethnic background, then you're less black. You cannot,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
So not only white people, some
You're
black people believe that you are less black if you date someone from another racial profile or ethnicity.
right.
So basically, you someone is supposed to get along with someone else only because they have the same skin tone.
Right. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And I
So
go, you're
yeah,
looking for
sorry.
a significant other, and you can, I mean, especially for some, what am I supposed to do? Because I'm half Indian, I'm half white. I can only date women that are half Indian, half white. Where do I fall into all of this? Because I'm not white or Indian, I'm both. So, I mean, so it would be absurd for someone to tell me, okay, Mike, when you're looking for a woman, make sure that it's a half Indian, half white girl, because that's what you're going to get along best with. I'm like, all right, well, I've met maybe 3 half Indian, half white girls in my entire life. And I wasn't attracted to any of them, not because there was anything wrong with them, but just sometimes chemistry is not there, right? Chemistry can't be manufactured. So you're telling someone it's difficult to meet someone you connect with, period. That's already difficult. And now you're okay, you're a black man, so you can only date black women.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll find one you get along with, but why do you have to why is that so pronounced in the forefront? Because I remember on internet dating websites, people would be very particular about ethnicities. A lot of white women would say, I'm looking for a white male who makes $250,000 a year, wants to have kids, or it'd be a black woman saying, I only date black men, so don't bother, contact me if you're into this, that. And I mean, hey, look, people can do whatever they want, but to me, like, it goes back to what you said. I go, you're basically saying that you're only going to get along with people that have your ethnic background. That's your mindset. When the reality is there's a lot of people that have your ethnic background that you probably don't get along with, because that's not enough, to develop friendship, even, let alone a serious relationship or serious romantic relationship.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there was a post, one of your posts you were talking about of your friends and family that you don't invite everyone to go to your place or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. I mean, my family is mostly all black. I mean,
Right.
cousins and everyone. I have most of my friends, because where I was raised, they are white. I have more in common with them than 99.9% of my family.
Right.
So then I'm not supposed to hang out with these guys. I call them brothers because they bled with me in my life battles.
Yeah.
So they've been through hell with me. Then I'm not supposed to hang out with these people as well. So I cannot have a relationship, interracial relationship with females. I cannot have male friends who are white or Asian because I'm black. Because if I need something, I can count on these guys more than I can count on 9.
Right.
I have 4 or 5 people in my family that I consider my parents that I can count on.
Right.
That's a lot. So, and my family, black, as I told you. So, what people don't usually think when they say these things is because they have this tendency to buy to everything. The way they approach their life, the way they see the world is usually based on either religion or race or everything, everything together. I mean, what about thinking for yourself?
Right.
What about making our own decisions? Because it's easy for me to say this right now, but when I was younger, this is quite intimate. When I was younger, because my parents, they never dated someone from, they never dated non-blacks, always dated black people. And when I was younger, they never said anything about it. But inside myself, I thought, am I doing something wrong dating someone who is not black? In the back of my mind, can you understand how can this affect when you're young, 12, 13, 14 years old? It's quite sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fortunately, I could overcome that. But at some point in my life, this was an issue because I felt this pressure. No one told me, but I said, "Who be the guy who is gonna date a non-black?"
Right.
So it was hard for me because, as you said, I mean, considering when I was raised in upper middle class, elite schools, best places to go. I always have had everything. I mean, everything. And most of my friends were white. If I had to choose one girl to date, basically there was one girl who lived close to where I lived, that went to the same places, and she's like a cousin to me. So I would be single to this day if it depended on dating only black women.
Yeah.
Here in Paulo is different. You see more black people around, but if you go to this again fancy places,
Right.
mostly white, and people don't understand this. Most foreigners don't understand this. They have this idea that Brazil is this racial equality, but it's not that at all.
No, it's so true. I mean, even here in America, it's not dissimilar. I mean, my wife and I live in a nice neighborhood here in Seven Hills. She's black, I'm not white, and we're probably two of maybe five non-white people in this entire neighborhood.
Damn.
And and you can feel the energy in the air sometimes. Like we go walking around the neighborhood, we walk the dogs or something, and it's almost as if we've met people that are stuck up to us, which to me doesn't make any sense because we live in this neighborhood too, So it doesn't make any sense anyway, just to be a polite person. You're just being an asshole here. But why are you stuck up to people that also live in the neighborhood? And the only thing I can think of is in their mind, like, hey, what are you guys doing in our neighborhood? You don't belong here. They don't want to say that. But it's there. I always make a joke with my wife. I go, if we ever move out of this neighborhood, I'm going to leave this review on Yelp. Down. I'm just going to go right down the line of, here's the mentality. So it's not verbalized, but you can feel it. And see, when you tell white people that, they think you're being overly sensitive. They're thinking like, oh, no, that doesn't happen. That's not what's going on. I go, you're not in a position to tell me what's happening or not happening because you're not experiencing it. It's like, look, I would never tell a woman who's complaining about sexism, oh, just relax, it's not that big of a deal, because I don't know how she's being made to feel or how uncomfortable she is in that situation, and she shouldn't have to deal with that. But I would never try to diminish it and say, oh, come on, just relax, it's just guys joking around, just deal with it, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, but yeah, that's true. I mean, most people don't realize, for example, when you travel, as I've been to many places. And whenever they learn that I'm Brazilian, most people don't realize, as I told you, because most Black African Brazilians, they don't travel abroad. And most African Americans don't do it either.
Yeah, most Africans, period, don't travel that much. You don't see a lot of Africans traveling anywhere.
Anywhere. So in South Africa, in the United States, in Australia, or even in Poland, they said, oh, is it true that racial relations in Brazil are really, really good? Is that true? I said, who said it? Who said that?
Yeah.
Brazilian. I say, how does he or she look like? Oh, right. White. So yeah, guess what? I mean, if you ask, my answer is, I'm probably the first African Brazilian that you met in person. So if you ask most of us, they are not going to agree with this BS that they try to sell, because sometimes they live in a bubble, inside a bubble. Upper middle class or something like that, and the only interracial relations, I mean, in their everyday life, is that their maid is probably African Brazilian or something like their driver or something like this. Not it's not an equal relation in a way that sitting in the same table, going to the same places.
Right.
So it's good to see. Whenever I my answer is like that, is usually like that. It's interesting to see the way people react. They get defensive and they say, no, it's not true. But not being trying to deny this is a way of it's violent as well, because you're denying someone the opportunity or to express him or herself. So it's a way of being violent, because the issues that usually people they try to make this comparison between Brazil and the United States regarding racial relations. I mean, here people are more hypocritical. I mean, they try to avoid the subject at all, and they don't realize that the African descendant population in the United States is about 13%. In Brazil, it's from 50 to 60%, depending on where you check the data. And I'm not gonna see my great grandchildren are not going to see an African president in Brazil. And in the United States, you had one. You get that's and people don't realize that, because if you turn on the TV here, if you watch a commercial or something, a car car commercial or something expensive. Whenever, if you come to Brazil, you realize that if you watch TV or anything related, when anything expensive, uh, you would be made to believe that Brazil is mostly white because that's what the media tries to sell.
Right.
Because people with purchasing power are white, so that's why if you watch TV commercials, it's very hard to see black people. Man,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I'm not a guy who believes that everything is racism. No, but when there is, we should talk about it, and
Right.
that's one of the issues of Brazil. Brazilian people sometimes they believe that we are special, and because of some magical formula, people here on this country are not everyone else is but Brazilians, and that's not true. Racism is everywhere in some way or another. It's different, but you cannot say even that it's less violent here because, as I told you, every 23 minutes, one young black man or women is killed here in Brazil.
Wow.
Well, so it says a lot about our country. It's an awesome country, but let's not deny what's wrong here.
Right. 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 Exactly. You can't improve anything if you don't even recognize the problem. And that kind of discrimination is even prevalent in places like India, where it's not that culturally diverse in terms of the population. It's mainly Indians who live in India, but darker skinned Indians have a much different experience than lighter skinned Indians.
Really?
And a lighter skinned Indian girl is considered more desirable for a family to want to join the two people together. There's a lot of arranged marriages still exist out there. Yeah, so lighter skinned is considered superior. Now, if you look at their entertainment, if you look at Bollywood or these movies that come out of there, it's pretty much very European looking Indian people, right? Like you never see Indian people like that walking around the street. And if you did, you wouldn't even think that they're Indian. I mean, the women look extremely European. The guys look more white than I do. So it's
Damn.
so the message that you're sending young people, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is that this is what's better. And the problem also that we see in the black community in America is that the money never circulates in the community.
Yes.
It's not black owned businesses supporting other black owned businesses. Primarily, it's people who own these businesses in the inner city but don't live there. So all the money goes out with them. It goes into a bank in their neighborhood, not where their physical business is. And also there's a mentality among many people there that if you support a black business, the black business is not as good as a white business or an Asian business because there's so much self-hatred that has been passed down from one generation to the next. Where maybe a black woman goes to a hospital and a black doctor comes out and she's like, well, I need to talk to the white doctor because you can't possibly be as good as that. So that self-hatred or just self-inferiority complex, that is pervasive in the communities here and elsewhere. And I think that's one of the reasons why you don't see a lot of people elevate out of that situation where they have aspirations of, I'm going to be a business owner and I'm going to support other business owners in my community. And because every other culture does that. When Asian people do that, no one says it's racist. No one says, oh yeah, Chinatown, all these, because Asians, they support all of their own people. They get a haircut, they go to an Asian barber. They go to a restaurant, they go to an Asian restaurant. You go to a bar, you're going to a bar down there. It's just it's just ingrained in their culture. And no one's like, oh, that's racist. They only do this. I mean, when I talk to white people about how important it is for black-owned businesses to support other black-owned businesses, they're often really incredulous and go, well, why does it matter? I'm just going to support whoever I think is the best. And I go, that's because you come from a place of privilege where you can do that, because it's like, I don't think about the ethnicity when I go to a store in my neighborhood. I was like, you don't have to, because it's all fucking white owned. All of it is. So you're consciously doing this without realizing it. And you're not even thinking of, who owns it, because it's automatically assumed that it's someone who looks like you that owns it. So it's just taken for granted.
Yeah, that's true. But this thing you said about India, it's I'm still shocked.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea. I've never been there, but I had no idea about this. No idea at all.
Oh yeah.
It's so sad. I mean, it's pretty sad. But I mean, in Brazil, there are not many black-owned business. It has been growing lately, but uh, uh, I mean, we should the way wh- whoever did this right were for example, the Jewish people. They support each other.
Right.
In every place they are, they support each other. No
Right.
one says it's racism, but
Right.
I believe more in Brazil is a little bit different than the United States because over there, I believe you guys have more black-owned business than here.
Sure.
Uh, Nonetheless, still there, people don't support each other, and I had no idea because I lived, but I didn't live in the United States for a long time, so I had no idea about what you just said.
Yeah.
It's crazy for me. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's not even, it's just, I'm able to observe these things on the outside, but I think a lot of times people grow up in these inner cities. They look at themselves and other people like them as inferior to other people. So now the goal becomes, I don't want to be a lawyer and work at a black law firm. I want to work at a white law firm because that's better. That means I've made it. I want my kids to go to a white private school because that means we've made it. So you're unconsciously telling yourself that your ethnicity is not good enough, and that to be successful, you have to be more like another ethnic group that you feel is superior.
Yeah, that's true. And but there's also another thing that happens at least here in Brazil. Uh, some black people, whenever they become successful, whatever that means, they want to be the only one. No,
Yeah.
I'm the only black guy who
Yeah.
made it. And
Yeah.
whenever they perceive someone, it happened to me, not from me, but to me.
Yeah.
Whenever they perceive someone that is educated, who is efficient, who is really good, they feel threatened because
Right.
they want to be the only one
Right.
at a particular place. And
That's
this is,
so.
but it happens a lot. Now, I have seen it lately more often than not because we have been talking more about this subject. But it's crazy. Most people don't realize that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. In fact, my wife and I were a member of this hoity-toity gym for a little bit, one of these upscale ones here in town. I won't say their name, but the energy of people there was very stuck up too. But what she found is that the black girls that she spoke to there were really dismissive of her because they're like, wait a minute, I'm the black girl with the four white friends. We don't, no, we don't need it. It's like the quota's been met. We don't need another black girl as part of the club because she's thinking, I want to be the only black girl that's here because I'm
Yeah,
treated special because now it's trendy for some people to be friends with certain ethnic groups, right? So it makes you look more progressive. It's like, oh yeah, we got a black girl in the groups. Now we look like we're not racist and we're progressive. And I'm not saying it's always that orchestrated, but I'm just saying sometimes it is. And it's funny because it's often the one minority in the group that is trying to block other minorities. Like, I want to be the only one here. I want to be the only one in the neighborhood. I want to be the only one at the law firm or the accounting firm. I want to be the only one on the sports team, whatever it is. See, and that's part of the problem too. That mentality of you want to make it, but if other people make it, if other people make it who look like you, that somehow diminishes you. That's like that kind of mentality.
it's scarcity mentality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's more people don't talk a lot about this, but it's more normal than not. I mean,
Yeah.
at least here in Brazil, it happens all the time. And I was talking about this with some friends that regarding this racial relations. Sometimes people they only look they only look for the outside. For example, they assume that because X, Y, or Z company they have one of their directors is black, that this dude or this guy or this lady is gonna help other black people
Right.
to to get better positions or give
Right.
opportunity to other black people. But my point is most people assume that only because you're black, you understand what being black is, that you know your heritage, then you know where you came from.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's not true. I have been able to speak to many people, and lots of, I'm talking about Brazil, of course, lots of people here, they have no idea about I'm not saying that they have no idea about who they are regarding this topic, because so what can you expect for someone who doesn't know who he or she is regarding race to help other people of that particular race? It's not going to happen automatically. So
No.
people only look outside and see, oh, see, there's a black guy working for X, Y, or Z company, so more black people will have opportunities. No, that's not true, because
Yeah, that's
maybe this guy, and it happens sometimes when with not even dark skinned people like me, black people like me, even mixed people. Sometimes here they don't consider themselves to be black. So, oh, I'm mixed. It's not like in the United States. If your great grandparent is black, you say, oh, I'm an African American, for
yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
light skin, like a Colin Powell, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
light
Yeah.
skin, or Stephen Curry, real
Right.
light skin. In the United States, oh, I'm a black man. That's true. In
Right.
Brazil, listen, maybe I am, maybe I don't know. That's crazy. That's crazy, because here is different. It's
Yeah.
easier to be considered black in the United States than it is in Brazil, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, that's wild, man. That's I mean, those are all such good points. You bring up so many points. It's so complex, race relations. And I think one of the problems also is that because we're so segregated, there's not a lot of communication happening. There's not a lot of organic conversations that are, and so it's really important that those conversations happen, but they're not happening. So it's a lot of white people have views of black people, but they've never actually met any black people that they're friends with. I'm not talking about just superficial exchanges. I mean like a real friendship where you can speak candidly now. And when you say something stupid, they're going to check you and vice versa. A lot of people don't have that experience. So their experiences of what they think of other ethnicities is based on the 2 seconds at a restaurant or a casino or standing in line somewhere to get into the movies, right? It's that level of superficiality. So we're still in this place of, and then even when people do interact, everybody's walking on eggshells now. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, there's a black guy in the room, so make sure you don't say this, and make sure
Political correctness.
like don't bring watermelon and fried chicken in here.
Political correctness.
About me, coming from a diverse ethnic background, I always thought that would be kind of funny. You bring some people over, you're like, hey man, I got your favorite foods here today. It would be a joke among all of us. But I think when we're all walking on eggshells around each other, now we're really doing a disservice, because the real problem that we have with race relations in the US, among many, is that there's not a lot of candid discussions, because people feel like they're going to be penalized for being honest. So if a white person says, look, I know it's wrong for me to feel this way about black people, but I do because of these experiences, she needs to be able to say that so that someone else can say, okay, I get where you're coming from, but here's where I'm coming from. And now she can see that perspective. But she's only going to get that if she has the courage to bring that up. And that's really uncomfortable, because most people are going to be they're going to be like, oh, you fucking racist bitch, get the fuck out of here. They're not going to give her any time. But I always say, black people understand white people way more so than white people understand black people. And I'm talking about America, because black people have to live in white America. They often work for white people. They have to interact with white people. So a lot of times they feel they have to tone down their quote unquote blackness, because otherwise they're too urban, they're too ethnic to be in this world, right? Those are the pressures that a lot of them feel. Now, white people never need to be anything but white when they interact with black people, because they don't feel like they have to change anything. Their attitude is like, hey, look, I'm the one with power. I'm the one in charge here. So I don't have to try to understand your perspective, but you have to try to understand my perspective, because you're going to work for me, and I'm the one who has the power here.
Yeah, I mean, regarding this topic specifically, Brazil and the United States, they're quite similar. I mean, well, I was raised in a white Brazil,
Yeah.
so, and you were saying about this political correctness thing.
Yeah.
If most people could listen to, whenever I have a conversation with my friends, everyone hanging out, they would they have no, we make all of these jokes and we don't care because we know each other.
Right.
We don't care. All this the watermelon, the chicken, yeah. But I make fun of them as well. Like it's both sides, and I'm not racist because of that. But with some people, including from my ethnicity, I have to think twice to be myself when I'm close to to some of my white friends.
Right.
Because you're being a racist. Because one of the jokes that we always make is that whenever we go to a party or something, and there is another black guy, friend of mine or not, we say, hey Fabio, either him or you, one of you guys have to leave, because most Hollywood movies or even Brazilian soap operas, there's only one black guy, so one of you guys have to leave. If I make this type of joke with some people, white or black, they're into political correctness. They label me as racist. And come on, am I not supposed to be to make fun of the? We have to talk about racism where there is racism. We don't have to see everything through this lens. For example, watching, I'm a huge NFL fan. One of the guys from one of the top channels over there in the United States, he was criticizing a head coach who is black, and then I committed the mistake of reading some YouTube comments and some of my brothers and sisters over the United States saying, "Oh man, you are a sellout," and I said, "What? Is that guy a sellout only because he's criticized a head coach because of due to performance?"
Right.
You're not able to criticize someone from your same ethnicity only because he is from your ethnicity. Is that was how racial relations are supposed to be? And there are still people in the United States and in Brazil and Africa that think like this. Because you're black, you are not allowed to be objective. You have to embrace everything that another black man or woman says.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we saw that during the election when Obama ran. There was a lot of pressure for black people to support him. It's like, hey, this is going to be the first black president. We all need to fall in line. Now, what if you don't agree with his political ideology, though? So now you're voting for him just because of his ethnicity. And why isn't that deemed as discriminating? Because you're only voting for someone based on their ethnicity. How's that any different than someone else only voting for a white president because that person's white and the president's white? So it has to be something deeper than that. But I remember even now, in America, it's obviously Republicans and Democrats, right? Those are the two main political parties. And black people are often considered not black if they identify as Republican. It's like, oh, why are you Republican? That's the white person's party. The Democrats are the ones that are all progressive. When you look at a lot of Democratic policies, though, they've been very racist over the years. Even people like Bill Clinton with 3 strikes and you're out and these other things, and a lot of black people were incarcerated from these kind of rules that came from what is considered the left, which is deemed as less racist than the right. When in reality, there's a lot of racism in both parties. So if you're trying to pick a party that doesn't have racist energy, I don't know what party you're going to pick, because that's pretty much everywhere there. But just the pressure of someone else telling you, oh, if you do this, you're not black. Okay, if you listen to heavy metal music, that's not black. You can only listen to hip hop and reggae, and soul and R&B. So people like to put you in these little categories too. It's like if you're on a vegan diet, you got to be a weak guy who weighs 90 pounds and you're not healthy at all, and you're an annoying person to everyone you meet who eats meat. Right? That's the stereotype there, and so forth. So it's like we can't let like what you said it best. You said eventually we have to transcend all of this. So in other words, you don't look at yourself as a black man anymore. Not that you deny being a black man, but you've transcended that, where your whole worldview is not based on your ethnic perspective.
No.
I feel the same way about that.
Not at all. Fabio sees the word as Fabio sees the word, not because I'm black or because whatever. Right. I mean, because people try to do that, to label someone of other people because they're intellectually lazy. That's why. That's laziness.
Right.
That's all. For example, Republicans and Democrats. Economically, I follow I read most newspapers from the U.S. economic, finance, etc. And economically, I align more with Republicans. Am I less black because I
Right.
believe in more a free market?
Right.
That's crazy, and people forget that. If I'm not mistaken, we're not the Republicans that abolished slavery. If I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah, they are. Yeah. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people forget that. I mean, I'm not trying to pick sides, but even here, I mean, the way I see it, I love studying economy, and the way I see it's more of the Chicago school of thought is more liberal, free markets. And
Right.
if I say this to some of my black friends, they say, listen, you should lean on the left, not on the right regarding economic issues because you're black. I said, no, I'm Fabio. I'm a rational human being. I'm
Right.
smart enough to make my own decisions. I'm not going to label myself or choose something only because you believe
Right.
that, because that due to my tone, I'm supposed to agree with everything you say.
Right. And then some of it is you're basically impeding your own self-reliancy because you're basically identifying with a party that says, "Oh yeah, we're going to give you all of this. We're going to give you some money, we're going to give you some reparations, we're just going to send you a check to get your vote." And what you're telling yourself now is that you're not capable of achieving those things on your own. Someone else has to give it to you. And that's a
Yeah.
really unhealthy mindset too, because I'm a big fan of Farrakhan, right? Louis Farrakhan, Nation of Islam. I don't know how familiar you are with him. I've posted some of his clips.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah.
the one thing I like about him is that he is always telling black people about the importance of self-reliancy. You need to own a business. You need to own the banks. You need to own this, right? Because that's power. Right? So money is power. So when people say, "Oh, money doesn't make me happy" and all that, I understand where they're coming from because that's true to an extent. If you do a job you hate, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you're not going to be happy. But if you do a job you love and you go from barely making each month to doing really well, believe me, your happiness goes up with it because when you don't have financial stress, now you can focus on other things. Now you can focus on spiritual growth and physical health and all these other things. When you have really pronounced financial stress and you're wondering, okay, how am I going to make rent this month? Maybe you have some kids you're trying to take care of too, so now you're worried about their well-being. It's a lot more difficult because you don't have power. You're in this weak position, whether you like it or not. So it's more, it should be more aligned with, I don't care about any handout. What I want is access to opportunity. So
Yes.
whoever's going to give me more access to opportunity is someone I want to support because that's going to allow me to elevate myself rather
Yes.
than we'll just send you a check every month and you just sit around and do nothing. Not to say that any party is necessarily offering that, but some people find that enticing because with the pandemic also when people started getting the stimulus checks, which I like to call welfare checks, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't get those checks because I understand a lot of people through no fault of their own lost their jobs, they can't work. I don't want to see those people end up on the streets. I don't want people with small kids ending up in a homeless shelter because they're not getting any support. We should support other people. But you should also have the mentality of I am going to build so much financial power that even if a fucking pandemic comes and I can't work for several months, we're going to ride right through that thing because I've got it in lock. I've got it in check. I'm not remotely stressed. And that was my mentality when this whole thing started. I was like, you know what? Worst case scenario, my business just goes to zero. Nothing's coming in, but we've got plenty to last us for a long time, and especially if we're smart with budgeting and so forth. So I'm not worried about that. And that's a big relief when you're not worried about financial stress. It's a position of power. It's like those 5 components of strength I said. You got to have physical strength because you can't, especially as a man, you got to have physical strength because when you have physical strength, you project confidence. You're less likely to deal with confrontation. Right? You don't
Yes.
have to be the biggest guy and all that, but you have to look like someone who can handle himself physically and be able to handle. You should be able to do pull-ups and push-ups and go running, right? Just basic things.
Basically.
And then strength is important too, because otherwise you just get lost in the superficiality of life. You're being pulled in all these material directions that you think are going to make you happy, and they really don't. So if you have a spiritual foundation, you can still be successful financially, but it's not your God now. Making money is not your God, where that's all you care about. More money, more happiness. And then you have to have mental strength, because I mean, if you're not someone who can understand how to solve problems and understand things about yourself, you're not going to get financial strength or physical strength, because that requires mental strength. I mean, people that are physically strong, they have to have mental strength too, to be really physically strong, to persevere, to push yourself through things. So I mean, so if you don't have any of these components, emotional strength, financial strength, physical strength, then you're it's like driving a car with 3 good tires and thinking that's enough. It's not enough. You have to have all 4. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to go anywhere.
This video about the 5 components of strength was one of your best videos by far. I loved it.
Yeah, I was looking up on that.
Yeah, man. I mean,
I am steroids, Jesus.
Yeah, because some mostly intellectual or wannabe intellectual people, when they look at you or me, they see 2 meatheads and they think that, it's only let me make money, and that guy is probably stupid because he's big, he's strong, whatever. And you should think, what's wrong with being strong,
right?
Being big and strong.
Right.
Our society works backwards. I mean, they believe that, of course, money is important, but if you're not healthy, who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What's the point of it? Because this is the only body you have, at least on my considering my perspective. It's the machine that's gonna take you to the rest of your life.
Right.
And for example, I had a conversation at my previous job. One of my bosses, he asked me, hey Fabio, how much do you pay to train jiu-jitsu? I said, it's X. It's quite expensive. He said, that's too much. But the next day he was buying like lots of expensive wines and a new cell phone, etc. I'm not judging, but what's more important to you?
Right.
What's wrong with being healthy and doing everything? You don't have to be either an athlete or an intellectual. You can be both.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be these binary choices. If you have one, you can't have the other. I mean, the goal should be to develop all those 5 categories. And I had one guy go, hey man, no one's perfect and all that. I was like, look, it's not about perfection. It's about reality, whether you like it or not. Like when I tell people, I go, look, if you're financially weak, that doesn't mean you're a bad person. I'm not saying that. It doesn't mean you're a lazy person either, because life is difficult. Not everyone can pull it together. But regardless of that, you're in a very weak position now, because if someone gets sick, you're at the mercy of other people's generosity. If you can't pay your bills, now you're at the mercy of someone else helping you. And that's not a strong position to be. That's my whole point. You want to be someone where you don't have to ask anyone for anything in terms of finances or favors or anything like that. That's when you're going to carry yourself in a totally different way. And then if you're someone who's just physically strong, but you don't know how to build a business or move your career path or communicate with people and all that, then you only have strength in this really limited context of application at the gym or some kind of physical labor type situation. You don't have comprehensive strength. So, I mean, all of those things have to be worked upon. I always say compassion is the most important form of strength. Because if you're a strong person, but you're a terrible person, you're a strong person physically, but you have no empathy for anyone or anything, then, how strong are you? You're not an asset to society at that point.
Yeah, I completely agree. Compassion is one, if not one of the most important forms of strength. I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy to be compassionate, because it's easier to be angry all the time, to judge people, to be aggressive. For example, some people here in Brazil, they say, let's burn all the racists. Some white people say it. I say, what the hell do you mean by that? I mean, plenty of keyboard warriors, there are plenty of these people that they don't have to face any consequences because you're on Instagram or YouTube or something, then you pretend to be brave or to be a bully. And but the thing is, you're just saying that you are not better than the racist. You're actually you're worse because you understand the situation, but you still decide to be to be aggressive in a bad way, because there is a good kind of aggression, the aggression that makes you move forward, to attack problems, to face reality. This is a good type of aggression.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but the aggression towards another human being that you cannot see, that you cannot develop, you waste an opportunity to develop passion. For example, John Lewis, the civil activist who died a few months ago.
Yeah.
That guy was and still is, because the way he approached life is still extremely valuable.
Yeah.
That's an example of compassion and strength, like to do what he did and the impact that he produced on the planet. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree completely. Well, hey man, this has been a fun conversation. We're 2 hours into this, so I think we can wrap it up here. This has been awesome, though, man. I loved talking to you, and I guess I don't know. I got anything you want to say? Any final words here?
No, as I said before, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to speak to you here, because I've been following your work for a few years. As I said before, I mean, I had to cope with depression during my whole life, and reading your book, Live Life Aggressively, and watching and listening to your podcast, it man, you were one. I never met you in person. I will at some point whenever I go to Las Vegas. I'm gonna train there, but you were one of my mentors. Without having met you, you were one of my mentors. Like, not only strength and conditioning, but the way you approach life. And I'm really say thank you to you.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I really enjoy hearing stuff like that, because honestly, one of the things that helps me with depression is helping other people. So if I can vocalize what I deal with, because a lot of times people look at my life and they think, oh yeah, that guy's got it all together. You know, he makes good money, he's healthy and so forth. He's got a good life. Looks like he's having fun all the time. And a lot of that's true, but I also deal with mental health issues, which a lot of us deal with. In fact, I think most people deal with depression, but they just don't admit it.
Yes, because true.
If you're drinking too much, you're not happy. If you're doing too much substance abuse, you're not happy. If you're constantly chasing this dopamine rush, right? You're always trying to stimulate yourself, whether it's watching TV, being on the internet, addiction to social media, drinking alcohol, right? And most people fall into those categories. That's a sign of someone who has mental health issues too. You know, I think the difference between people like you and me is that we're just honest about it. We're going, okay, we have our mental health struggles and here's what we deal with. And we don't use it as an excuse for not doing anything. I mean, there's nothing that I want to accomplish that I don't feel I can accomplish or that I've already accomplished because of this. So it's not a crutch in any way, but it's something where you have to flip it and make it a positive. I mean, like when my face first got burned, when I got this sunburn here, this happened when I was 28. So I lost all the pigments here. And that was overnight. So I go, wow, man, I totally drastically changed my physical appearance. And initially you're just going, okay, I got to find a cure. I got to find a solution to get back to what I looked like before this. And after a while, you have to accept the fact that that's not going to happen. So now you have to learn how to live with something like this. But that's a process, though. That's not something where you just wake up one day and you're like, I'm good. But eventually you get to the point where you realize, you know what? I didn't want to go out on this date because I was worried about how she would what she would think if she saw me. She would recoil and all that. But so you have that fear going in, but you go, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway because I don't want this to be a crush. You know, I'm going to go teach seminars in front of people all over the world, and you can't hide your face. I'm going to wear a mask. I guess I now just wear a mask. If the pandemic happened at the same time as the sunburn, it may not have been an issue. I'm like, well, fuck it. I'll just put a mask on everywhere I go. You know, solution solved. You know, but you know, at that time, I always found myself going, you know, I don't want to do this because I'm worried about this, and that's when I would make myself do it. You know, that's how you deal with depression. And sometimes I don't want to do this because I feel this way. So, you know what? Go do it anyway. I don't want to work out because I don't feel good. I don't feel motivated. Go fucking work out anyway, because even if you don't have a great workout, you're going to feel better. I don't want to go hang out with friends because I'm not feeling good. Go do it anyway, because just the human interaction is going to be a positive. So that's always my advice to people, is that this mental health issue you deal with is probably going to be something you deal with for the rest of your life, but it's not something that has to impede your level to be happiness, if it makes sense. Because people will think, man, I'm depressed, so I can't be happy. I go, no, it's not that simple. There's nuance to this thing. You can have mental health struggles and depression and also find enjoyment in life and also be happy. You just have to put in more work with it. That's all. Just a paradigm shift.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift. And if you had to deal with depression, I had to start dealing with it when I was 13 years old. So I've been dealing with it most of my life. And the thing is, it helped me to be who I am because I'm disciplined. That's me. Right. I mean, if I had to rely on motivation, I would be still in bed. So that made me see the world, to travel, to martial arts and everything else. I mean, It made me who I am, a disciplined guy, a disciplined man.
Yes. And that's the most important thing you can develop. Discipline's the most important thing you can develop, because long after the motivation train has left the building, long after the motivation plane is in the sky, discipline remains.
Exactly.
That's how I look at fitness the same way I look at brushing my teeth, in the sense that I don't need discipline to brush my teeth. That's just habit. You wake up every day, you go do it. You take a shower every day. You eat you eat breakfast every day. These are all disciplines. So why not have the same discipline when it comes to physical training? You understand that brushing your teeth every day is important, so you make it a priority. Well, physical fitness is just as important as that. So it's got to be made. You got to make it a priority. It's as simple as that.
The same here. It's another tool to express your discipline and to develop more discipline. And physical training, martial arts, everything, for me, it's a way to live better. People usually look the outside. Oh, you want to be. No, it's not the way because of the way I look or to beat somebody up on the street. Right. It's to be better, to function better. I exercise because I need to.
Yeah, and that's why every martial artist I've met is always a super nice person. Have anything to prove. They don't, and that's really healthy for guys, because a lot of times guys get themselves in trouble because you overcompensate. Like,
yes,
I don't want this person to think I'm weak, so I'm going to do this now. Or it's like, she thinks I'm a chump, so I'm going to come at her aggressively. And I go, that's just overcompensating. When you have real strength and confidence, those kind of things just bounce right off of you. It's like Neo in the Matrix, right? The bullets are coming and you're just getting out of the way. It's like, oh, here goes that bullet. Here goes that bullet. Yeah. It's not something where you're just getting impacted all the time. Now you can bob and weave through these situations.
Yeah, it can be, as I enjoy reading philosophy, you can be stoic. I mean, and just like Steve Cotter, you were talking to him a few months ago, I guess. I'm a huge fan of Steve, also jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah, awesome guy. And he said that if you are an alpha male, and we are, I mean, we don't have to pretend to be something else. We don't have to be aggressive. We can chill and let things happen.
You can be a cool guy. You can be a friendly guy. I'm a friendly guy to everyone I meet. I'm only not friendly if they come at me in an aggressive way. And even then, I don't always. Sometimes I overreact, but most of the time I try not. But I don't put out that negative energy to people. I don't walk around trying to look tough in front of people and stare at people. I'm the first guy to smile at someone and say hello. Not like, okay, here comes another guy. So I'm going to try to be more masculine than him when he walks by. He knows who the fucking alpha is here, motherfucker. I'm not smiling at you. That's weak. The most fierce people I've ever met are people that are super polite, super nice people too. So that's just the paradigm shift that people need to have. If you need to overcompensate, it's because you don't have what you profess to have, and that's the problem. So develop that. And now you don't have to overcompensate anymore. It's
exactly. Simple as that. Simple as that, Mike.
This is awesome, man. This is a great conversation. Let me go ahead and hit stop recording because I want to make sure we don't lose this episode.